What's going on, everyone? As we can see, the S&P 500 and SPY ended up pulling back quite a bit today, especially from pre-market highs this morning. We're going to be talking about the overall shift that's starting to occur in the market right now, as well as talk about a lot of these tariff updates from today. Trump said that retaliatory tariffs were hitting at midnight last night, so we're seeing tariffs increase for a lot of countries there. We'll be going over that situation, as well as the semiconductor situation with potential tariffs on some chip imports as well. And then we're even going to talk about how Trump is starting to target the CEO of Intel. Yes, Lip-Bu Tan is under fire. So stick with us and let's get right into it. First off, retaliatory tariffs are snapping into effect. This is a pretty big deal right now, and I do think that this is something that might end up impacting markets. A lot of these countries ended up trying to do deals, obviously, with the United States. Some of them were not able to accomplish these deals and get them done, and a lot of these countries are now facing retaliatory tariffs that are jumping. Last night, Trump was actually posting, "It's midnight. Billions of dollars in tariffs are now flowing into the United States of America." And he was even posting even more stuff about the tariffs as well. So it seems like Trump is pretty excited about this, of course, but I think some countries aren't, right? You know, there's countries like, let's just say, Brazil. They are actually facing much higher tariff rates than what was initially claimed. It looks like those got upped a little bit more than people would have thought. And I do actually have like the entire tariff list right here. So let's go over it. Brazil sitting at 50% with India. Those two countries have super high tariffs. Trump is not happy with both of them. I know that we talked about India and Russia a while ago, and that is a situation that's ongoing. He's mad because they're helping by buying Russian oil. Obviously, that benefits Russia. So India's under fire. They have 50% tariffs, but we'll kind of go through the list here. China's sitting at 30% now. Mexico, 25%. Canada was pretty significant on the front page there at 35%. You know, and going down to some of these like lesser numbers, you know, the UK at 10%. Some of these countries did get deals done, which was good for them, right? But the ones that didn't, of course, and the ones that Trump had some problems with now face pretty steep tariffs. So I just thought that this is a situation that, you know, is ongoing, and it's still something that could be affecting the stock market right now. A lot of people are scratching their heads and saying, well, why did the S&P 500 or the SPY truly fall today? Honestly, it's hard to say. You know, there was a lot of negativity out there. Caterpillar was down quite a bit. I know that they talked about tariffs hitting them quite a bit with like $1.5 billion potentially hitting them. Looking at their shares over the past few days, they had earnings on Tuesday. Now the stock is falling down. It does seem pretty overextended, so I will be watching Caterpillar very carefully, especially with tariff headlines and things of that nature hitting and causing some price action. But talking about price action with some of these semiconductor companies, like what is going on? AMD actually ripped up today. This is a pretty massive move. They ran up 5.6%. Apple ran up after Tim Cook was with Trump last night in the Oval Office. And while Tim Cook was with Trump presenting the Apple investments in the United States, Trump mentioned that they're going to be doing a 100% tariffs on imported chips, but some firms are exempt. Now, he did say that if you are building in the United States and, you know, you obviously still are planning on doing that you're going to be all good, you'll be all set. But he did say not to try to wrangle out of your pledges. You know, he said if you're building and then you end up not building, we're going to come back, add it up, and make you pay at a later date. So it seems like they're very committed to this. Now, like Apple here, right? He's saying that there will be no charge because they've committed a lot of money to building in the United States. And there was actually a lot of chip stocks that were popping off today. Like AMD, for example, up 5.6%, and even in after hours last night, ended up coming back really well after these announcements were made. I noticed MU, another chip stock, right as these announcements were made, ended up exploding last night, closed up today 2.8%. So keep your eyes on these chip stocks. Some are moving in a pretty good way. Taiwan Semiconductor even last night. Nice pop to the upside. They're probably really happy as they're investing money in the United States. So a lot of these stocks starting to move in pretty awesome ways. So keep the chip stocks on the radar, especially with all this news coming into play. But there was one chip stock that did not do very well today, and that was Intel, unfortunately. They closed down 3.14%, and Trump is pissed off at Lip-Bu Tan. He says that the CEO of Intel is highly conflicted and must resign immediately. There is no other solution to this problem. That is a pretty big thing to say, right? He says he must resign. There is no other solution. Like literally Trump saying, look, it doesn't matter what else you guys say or what you're going to do. We're not pretty much doing anything until Lip-Bu Tan resigns. So I found that to be extremely interesting. Intel shares were dropping from this. Now, Lip-Bu Tan does have some ties to Chinese companies. He's actually been investing in Chinese companies, which was, I thought, the main concern that I saw. Some link to the country's military, both directly or through ventures funds, Reuters reported, and also, obviously, Tan's links to China are the main problem here, right? If we could see maybe a new CEO come in for Intel, maybe that would be nice. I know that the CEO of Intel right now, Lip-Bu Tan, was pretty touted for getting Cadence to move up, and people were kind of hoping that Intel would be revived from the dead here with Lip-Bu Tan taking over, but it seems like that is not going to be the case, at least as of right now. I found this to be an extremely interesting situation. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. If Intel stock starts breaking under this recent low, down around $17.65 and even like the $18-ish support range, this will be brutal, right? It has bounced off of here multiple other times in the past and continues to hold. So if it does break down, I'm going to be a little bit worried about Intel in the short term. That is for sure. Something that really stood out to me is whenever we look at the SPY overall, a lot of people are like, okay, well, why did the SPY do this today? Why did it do that? It's really affected by the top stocks in the S&P 500, and the top 10% largest U.S. stocks now reflect a record 76% of the U.S. equity market. I thought that was a pretty insane thing to say. We continue to see just certain companies like NVIDIA, Apple, obviously Microsoft, Google, companies like that continue to steal the spotlight and to just propel themselves up above every other company. And we can see, like looking at this chart here, just the overall weighting and impact that these stocks have on the S&P. Like NVIDIA has a straight up 7.76% weighting. Some of these weightings are huge right now, and these are the top 10 in the S&P. We can see Berk B squeaks in down there at the bottom. Tesla, we got both Google's, Broadcom, Meta, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft. It's a pretty nice list, right? These are pretty respectable companies and ones that a lot of people like to trade, especially for options with like NVIDIA in some cases. But either way, I just wanted to show this. I thought that it was extremely interesting. And, there is some stats with this. Like this officially surpassed the previous record set before the Great Depression in the 1930s. And by comparison, at the 2000 dot-com bubble peak, the top 10% share was at 73%. So it's actually getting above, quite a bit above the dot-com peak even as well. So I know that a lot of people like to look at the overall market right now, and they're kind of worried that we might be getting into like some type of bubble. And this is just another piece of evidence that might show that, we might be getting there, at least in terms of how impactful the top 10% largest companies in the U.S. are right now. And I wanted to show this right before we got into the SPY analysis and predictions for tomorrow. And with some of the key levels for today, of course, we're going to be eyeing up one of the bigger levels that we've been watching recently, which is 629.50. This 629.50 zone has had a lot of action over the past couple of weeks. We've seen SPY touch it and bounce pretty much multiple times. We'll have to go to like a 15-minute chart to truly see and appreciate all of the good movement here. We can see where the green arrows are going, multiple touches and bounces right off of the 629.50 zone. You can also call it 630 if you want to get a little technical, but a lot of these touches really do bounce off of more of 629.50. Now, if we continue to hold 629.50 into tomorrow, I think that would be a good bullish sign for the SPY. But if the SPY starts to sell off underneath 629.50, I'm going to be watching for the next larger supports, 628 and then 627. This zone will be crucial. It was a zone that actually held earlier this week. Once we get below there, the big thing to eye up is going to be our trend line. I know that we've been watching this trend line a lot. You guys are probably sick of hearing about it right now, but nonetheless, the SPY was actually pretty close to it at its low of day today. If we get another drop off tomorrow, it'll probably touch and test the trend line once again. And again, 625, 627, 628 are some good supports there. The recent low and bottom, more down around 620, is going to be very critical over the next few days. If that ends up breaking, then I think a lot of people will end up turning bearish. The big question is today's overall move and price action something that's going to materialize into tomorrow, or is this just part of the recovery? You know, so far, the recovery's been pretty good the past few days. We're actually forming a little bit of higher lows, which is nice. Now, if we would have broken under like 628 today and 627, then it would have kind of ruined the higher low setup. But for now, things are staying intact, and overall, the SPY has been pretty resilient. So I would not be surprised if it kept trying to move higher, but I am skeptical because over the past few trading days, we have been starting to see a little bit of a shift, and I guess I'll even just call it the past couple weeks. Like since last Thursday, last Wednesday, the SPY started selling off, and we've just had a lot of selling pressure. You know, we've had some days where the SPYs went straight down, and then we've had other days where the SPY recovered up in some pretty crazy ways. Kind of like yesterday, right? Pretty nice overall recovery, and even into after hours there. Very nice rip, but we're seeing that chop, right? Today, instant chop coming in right after the fact. So I think that we're seeing a shift. We're not necessarily seeing the bull market that we were seeing from like the middle of July up to those all-time highs around 640. There was a little bit of downside price action and shifts mixed in there, but nothing like what we're seeing right now. So just keep that in mind for the next few trading days. I would say is a level to watch to the upside would be 634. If we could really rip above that tomorrow, I would think that the high of day today around 638 could come back into play, if not even, you know, a possible breakout of 638. But again, I am skeptical of that. I do kind of lean down, and I'm looking more for like a 630 breakdown, if I was being honest there. But either way, you know, we know that it could go either way. I'm showing both scenarios, and we have to adapt. Do not get stuck and marry one direction. That's how you'll get ran over. That's how you'll end up buying puts at a time whenever you should be playing the breakout, right? All right. With that all out of the way, let's check out some of the earnings for tomorrow. Now, the earnings calendar is coming to an end this week. We do have Fubo, Tempest, Wolf, Wendy's, CGC, all in the morning before open, so those are going to be some big reports there. I do think that the earnings, though, are probably dying off for the week. You guys can probably tell that. And then, of course, on the economic lineup, there isn't really too much. All that we really had this week was the ISM services on Tuesday, and then the initial jobless claims Thursday. Nothing really set for the rest of the week here. So now we can get into the fun stuff, which are some setups and predictions for tomorrow. And with my first play, I'm looking at APA. Yes, APA for a nice post-earnings run. They had earnings yesterday, and they're starting to move to the upside in a pretty decent way. There was a big money trade on this one back on April 14th, which was funny. They bought the 20 strike calls. Nonetheless, it's done very well since April 14th. But I'm watching it, and I'm seeing an overall downtrend start to break in the short term. If we go to this recent peak and we start to look at this overall downtrend and just the overall setup in general, we're starting to get a bit of a breakout as of today. If we can get back above this key range, and I would say even back above key intraday resistance around $20, I would think that APA could start to run again. Again, we had earnings, so it's kind of a post-earnings run, and if we do get that good continuation, I think there could be some great opportunities as it starts to break $20 per share. Just be a little wary, like as we go to the daily chart with APA, we can see that it's been selling off in a pretty massive way. I do believe that we could see a broader uptrend start to take hold, and hopefully this is the beginning of that so we can catch it here in the short term for tomorrow. But with my next setup, I'm actually looking at Disney for a possible move to the upside. But the thing is that I'm actually looking for a broader downtrend to take place. Now, let me explain. If we go to Disney and we go to a daily chart, we can see that it's been in a massive overall range. It's actually touched the top of this range and rejected multiple times. Same thing with the bottom of the range. The bottom of the range is more like $80 to $90. The top of the range is pretty much right around $120 to $125. We can see that it's obviously a very large range. It's held up actually for multiple years at this point. Disney is now trading back into the range, and what I'm actually watching for in the short term is for a slight recovery out of Disney tomorrow. But as a few days go by, I'm going to be watching for a subsequent touch of the 116 resistance and then drop lower. I noticed that they had their earnings move, and today they had a pretty rough drop, pretty much testing the low from that initial earnings drop. Now, whenever I'm looking at it, there was a good peak right before they dropped here at 116, and even on the first initial day, another nice peak there. So it's kind of double topping. I'll be watching for a retest of 116 tomorrow. Now, if we end up not retesting that, I will just watch straight up for a 112 breakdown. I do believe that once it breaks 112 in the short term, we will get some nice downside selling pressure and the overall downtrend can continue. So if it plays out that way, honestly, I'd prefer it. But what I am watching for tomorrow is for a possible bounce and recovery into this 116 resistance. And if we go to the Bookmap, we can see that there's a bunch of sellers stacked up at 116. Actually, even more than are stacked up at 115, which kind of surprised me. There's like 4,000 shares stacked up at 115 and 20,000 shares stacked up at 116. And in the short term, I talked about that key 112 support. Well, you can see pretty much at like 111.80, there's a ton of buyers stacked up. So like I said, if we start to break under that 112 area, I think that there could be a good sell-off that starts to come into play, especially if these buyers at like 111.80 start to get wiped out too. But that's what I'm watching for the next couple days with Disney. Shout out to Bookmap for the X-ray vision, of course. And like I said, just be a little bit wary of the possible recovery tomorrow, but hopefully we see the 112 breakdown. With those out of the way, it is time for tomorrow's momentum plays. And with the first one, I'm looking at CoreWeave to the upside. If CoreWeave can break above 122, watch it up. This stock is on fire, up 9.8%. I like how the high of day is just under 122. So if it can break 122, then watch it for a continuation. With the next setup, I'm watching Navitas, NVTS, also to the upside. If they can break above $7, then watch for the breakout. Pretty fire growth stock here. And with the third and final setup, watch CrowdStrike to the downside. If they can break under $420, then watch them down. They closed down 5.91% there. Pretty rough move by CrowdStrike. Those are the three momentum plays for today. Do not play them unless they break above or below the levels that I listed. And now it's time for today's $506,000 big money trade. And we're looking at ticker symbol S, which is Sentinel-1. Sentinel-1 is like a cybersecurity company, and it did actually drop down quite a bit today. Fell down at 3.7%. But the big money trader here is actually buying up the 17 strike calls expiring in December. More specifically, December 19th of 2025. They put $506,000 into this play. Whenever I'm looking at S here, Sentinel-1, the overall setup is pretty crazy. We can see that the daily chart has been pulling back a lot, and support has been coming into play, and it's being tested. If we do see S end up breaking down, this will obviously be a pretty rough play for the big money, right? I believe that the big money here is looking for a good support bounce and a possible play back to the upside. If we do see that happen over the next few trading days, the 17 strike calls could be perfect for a possible uptrend over the next couple months into, like, let's say November, December, right? The 17 strikes actually pretty close to the money. I would think that if they were shorting them, that they would go with a strike other than 17, because like I said, if we do end up seeing that support bounce in the short term, 17 will go in the money pretty quickly. And, if you short them, it would be pretty detrimental. But I am watching this one quite a bit. I found it to be extremely exciting with the support coming up because it creates a good risk reward scenario. Like if we went long, just like right where the price is now I know this isn't the option, it's the stock, but it kind of shows the possibility either way. You can have a great risk reward targeting up to around $20.50 up to that next major resistance. And who knows, these have a lot of time, possibly even higher, right? So the risk reward could get even better than that. But I do like it up to those next targets and next upper levels of the range. So that's what makes this one pretty exciting for me. And we'll see how the big money trade ends up developing here as the next few months go by. But we cannot move forward without talking about today's member of the day, which is GDog23. Thank you, GDog, for always joining up on the morning lives and always posting up your profits. I appreciate you joining up as always. Nice gains today. Glad to see it, like up around $200 or so. Some nice gains on SPY and another one on QQQ there. Oh, even a third picture here, up 380 for the past week, 102%. There we go. Awesome stuff, GDog. Glad to see that you're killing it out there. Awesome profits, though, by everybody in the Profits channel today. Glad to see some pretty fire gains out there. Even Scan with FTNT. I know that was a pretty insane one from today. But if you want to be member of the day, join up with the link in the description down below to join the Discord. Check out the link to join the trading floor as well, where you can get access to the SurgeBot plays. SurgeBot's always calling out intraday setups. We can see today, CrowdStrike ended up popping up 196%, and there were quite a few big movers today as well. And even in the pullbacks channel, CrowdStrike 279% from the pullback play. So pretty awesome there. If you guys want to access, check out the link in the description and the comments down below. Other than that, I hope everybody has a great rest of the trading week. Tomorrow's the final day, so let's make it count.